Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and I just want to very briefly talk about who I am. My name is Herb Norwegian, and the work that I've done is as a result of working with a lot of good people over the years, and I have to mention a couple of people here in the audience that made me who I am. When I was a young kid back in my early 20s, 1920, I traveled into Europe, Germany, speaking on indigenous rights, and one of the guys that taught me a lot was Bobby Overvold in the back there. Bob, could you stand up there, Bob? Yeah, there's my man, my Bob Overvold. Him and I, we heckled the Germans there when they were speaking. I want to thank you for that. Another person I wanted to also acknowledge is a couple of years ago, I think about 2 years ago, we built a moose-skin boat and up the upper South Nahanni, and we brought it down and we asked the Sautouwatian to help us build it. And the gentleman that's here with us today had helped us put that boat together. I'd like to acknowledge Elder Leon Andrew. Leon? It's those kinds of people like Bob, Leon, that these are like professors. These are people that I learn from, and every one of you, one way or another. If I had worked with you, I've learned something from you. Especially I see my buddy there, Gary, that's here with Ducks Unlimited, taught me a lot about ducks, because now I like boiling ducks. Ducks is my favorite food. But anyway, I'm here today to talk about the Nahanni Park. The Nahanni, as you see it, is along the Yukon border. It's a large area that we were able to carve out back in the earlier days of our negotiations. And the park originally was established in 1976. It was roughly about 4,700 kilometers square. And originally it was when Trudeau had paddled the river, they heard that the large companies were looking at putting up a dam, a hydro dam, up the South Nahanni. And the elders and some of the people there had asked Trudeau, who was in government that time, to come and see the river. And so he paddled the river right from the top end all the way down to Nahanni Butte. And it was at that point there, he said, this is just too massive, it's just too beautiful of an area to be turned into a hydro dam. So as a result of that, he appointed a group of people to actually look at carving out an area. And so they were able to, then at that time, this was just an interim reserve, that they had a line that was drawn along the river of the South Nahanni, but that was just a small sliver of a park, and it was just an interim area. We came on board with our negotiations. We brought the territorial government, Canada, and everyone together at the table, and we started negotiating. And the first thing that we negotiated was a framework agreement, which basically laid down the rules of engagement on how we're going to negotiate. The second part of that was the interim measures agreement. The interim measures agreement also is a tool that's put in place so that while you're negotiating, land is not being tampered with. Because in a lot of cases back from what we've learned over the years was that as you come to the table, as you're negotiating, the third parties, the mineral companies, the oil and gas people are grabbing all the rights and the permits and licenses as you're negotiating at the table. So in this case here, what we wanted to do is to have them back off. And out of that, we were able to then immediately start looking at closing down areas that were very sensitive. The Nahanni Park was also one that was really sensitive, and the work that we had put into there was First of all was when we saw the sliver of a park, the elders that we brought together in Fort Simpson, it was an ecological study that we did. We brought over, I think, just about 200 people, Denny, elders, parks people, the environmentalists. We brought everyone together and we talked about what should we do with the park. The little piece that was there wasn't good enough to protect the entire area. So elders then said, well, we asked the elders, what is the first thing that you want to do? What is it that you're trying to do with the park? What is it that touches you the most? And they said water. Water is the thing that's just sacred to us because we live in Nahanni Butte, we live in Fort Simpson, and we know that there are a couple of mines up the watershed. If anything was to happen with these mines and tailings or anything of that nature was released into the river, we will be affected by that. So we definitely have to have a mechanism in place or a way on how we can actually control that. So we asked them, what do you want to do about the park? Do you want to keep it the way it is? Then they said, well, give us a couple of options. Let's take a look at how we could do it. One option was just to keep the existing sliver of a park that was set up by Trudeau back in '76. The other was a smaller piece that Parks Canada had done was they selected some areas outside of the park, little blocks, and that would be the park that they wanted. But then we explained that. We went to the elders and we said, well, this is what these two options are on the table. They said, let's look at a third option, they said. Let's protect the entire watershed. And they said, Herb, you get up there with a pen, give us a big map, and draw around the entire watershed, all the water that drains towards the South Nahanni. So in that setting, I was able to take the felt pen, and then we followed the Yukon border and went right up to the top end of the Nahanni and into the Ram Plateau and into the North Nahanni area, and we came back. We had three options, and everybody got back together and we said, well, we've got three options, and we explained the first one, and people were laid back and said, yeah, nice. The second, again, was, well, here we go again, Parks Canada wanting to grab some more land. But then there's this third option with this massive watershed. It looked like a feather by the time it was done. This is what you elders are asking for. This is what it'll look like. After we made that presentation, there was just a long silence, just like this. And then I think it was Leo Norwegian and Mary Kazon, elders that have passed on now, said, well, it makes sense that we protect the entire watershed. We think that the third option, the entire big feather option, is the one that we want to go with. And just by speaking, just two elders speaking, right away there was just, everybody was jumping up, that, yep, that's the one that we want. So it didn't take long, I think maybe even 10 minutes, we were able to then choose the third option. So that's the option that we have today, and as a result of that, we had hired people to actually fly around and do the new park boundary. So the park now has expanded 7 times. It was a little sliver of a park before, but now it's expanded 7 times. And what we've also done now is we've also have a system in place. We have a consensus team made up of representatives from the communities and from Parks Canada. And we sit together roughly about 4 times a year. It's like a management body. It basically has its own set of agenda. It talks about everything from tourism that's going to take place in down the valley. It also talks about all the research that might take place, the studies that are going to happen, on and on. There's even, we have people from all over the world that come there and they want to film the place. They want to do movies. They want to, take advantage of the great scenery. And so the consensus team actually sits down and, every 4 times a year, and they take a look at all these proposals and stuff. It's just incredible. I mean, you got mountain hikers and people that are wanting to do some heli diving, and I mean, it's just massive. So we have to be careful on the stuff that we would allow. So it was that kind of a thing, and the consensus team actually manages the entire park. We have Parks Canada people that sit there also. They give us their presentation on new legislation, new things that they want to do. Along with the big one that for us in the Decho was really close to us is that, does this close the door to Aboriginal activity like hunting, trapping, people wanting to use the area? And so we made it very clear that that won't be altered, that won't be affected at all. So today, and since the beginning of the establishment of the park, our people are able to hunt and able to trap in the Nahanni Park. But we're very respectful in a way that when we're hunting on the river, we have to be careful, and we're very conscious of the paddlers, the people that are coming down, because you've got rafts, you've got canoes, there's sometimes about maybe 12, 14 canoes like paddling at one time, and when we're going up, we see these people and they wave at us, and and a lot of times if we get a sheep or a moose, they paddle beside it, they stop there, and really respectful. And so it's that kind of a thing that goes on, that there's respect for their way of life and they respect us. So we've been very careful about that, and what we're doing now is that we want to find out the schedule of when a large group is going to be paddling down, and if the large group is coming down, we are telling people not to go there until the next few days after they have come through, and that sort of works. Our people like that, because a lot of these guys from Nahanni Butte here, they're maybe skinning a sheep or a moose, on some nice pebble beach gravel bars, and all of a sudden just out of nowhere, somebody from out in the river yells, "Hello, hello, hello" there. And here these guys come in and they're taking pictures, and they're really disruptive. They sort of really feel uncomfortable about that. But that's the system that we have in place. We have protocols. We let people know that if they're going to go into the park, that let the people of Nahanni Butte know. People that live in Nahanni Butte, a small community of about 150, live there, and they always want to know if people are coming through. And it's out of just pure, gesture. It's something that they would like to know, because it's a safety issue. If people are going up there, they want to know who's up there. And cleanliness, if they're out there hunting, they want to make sure that the river, the shorelines are all kept clean, and so it's that kind of a thing. And of course, us being hunters, we're part of that cycle. We're part of the carnivore chain, and we are part of that. We harvest the area, but we're also respectful, and people tell us about that. And so it's a well-balanced thing, and we're really proud about the way that the system is set up. And of course, all of you, one of these days, if you have a chance, you go visit the Great Falls, and if the Moose Skin Boat movie is in your neighborhood, make sure to check it out. Thank you.